Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Bluff Creek Project Podcast. I'm Tate Hieronymus. I'm one of your hosts. Unfortunately, we won't be joined tonight by Kip Morrill because he is busy moving, and that's a lot of work in itself. But tonight we got Cliff Barackman on the show. For those who don't know who Cliff is, he's been on the TV show Finding Bigfoot, and he's a musician and all-around great guy. So, Cliff, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. It's always a pleasure to talk to anybody from the Bluff Creek Project. So, yeah.
So, how you doing over in Boring, Oregon? That's where you live, right?
No, I live in the woods outside of Sandy, Oregon, but the North American Bigfoot Center, my Bigfoot museum that I opened with my wife this past year, that's in Boring, Oregon. Yeah, it's just right down the road, 20 minutes away or something. Yeah.
Okay. So, Cliff, for those who don't know, tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got involved in Bigfoot.
Oh, gosh. Well, I've been a Bigfooter for kind of a long time. I think I really started my field research back in around 1994. I was reading everything I could for a year or two before that, because what started me on this path, besides just being generally kind of an eccentric individual, was I stumbled across a couple books that were written about Sasquatches from a scientific perspective. And it kind of blew my mind that scientists were doing anything on this, because obviously growing up in the 1970s, I was aware of Sasquatches and, I was interested in the subject, I guess, like loosely. Can't really say I was doing any research or anything, or didn't really take it too seriously. It was just one of those, kind of fun, interesting, eccentric things I had, like aliens and satirical religions and just weird things. I was just into anything that was weird and unusual, and Bigfoot was on the list. Monster movies, that kind of thing, Godzilla. But those scientific books really pushed me over the edge because I'm a science nerd. I've always loved science, and I advocate strongly for paying attention to science. It's because it's a really effective tool at learning about what is real and what's not. I mean, it's like any other tool. It applies very, very well to some situations, but perhaps not to every situation. Science doesn't do a good job explaining love or something like that. You know what I mean? But yeah, so the science part of it really kind of hooked me. And being an amateur scientist like myself, a citizen scientist, because I'm an amateur astronomer as well. I've got a pretty nice telescope, and I almost was a professional astronomer actually until Calculus 2 kicked my ass. I didn't want to say Calculus 2. My God, I don't want to do that for a living. This is horrible. But I've always loved science and natural sciences in general. So I said, well, gosh, since other people are doing science stuff on this, I can do that too. Because I understood and still understand the contributions that amateur scientists make to professional scientists. For example, I'll use amateur astronomy again. Amateur astronomers discover the vast majority of new comets and asteroids because they're the ones who are out in their backyards or out in the mountains looking through their telescopes for fun. Professional astronomers have to petition for telescope time, and they have to use it for the certain project that they got the grant for. And there's all sorts of logistical barriers and constrictions on what they're allowed to do. So the people who are hobbyists are the ones who make the most discoveries of new comets and things, and then they report their findings to the professionals, and the professionals jump on board. And I saw an opportunity for that, I guess, with Bigfoot, since most scientists back in the day weren't really paying attention to it. I mean, that's an opportunity for us scientifically minded people to make some progress on a subject and perhaps participate in something, bigger than ourselves in a way. So that's kind of a long-winded way of version of how I got into this. So
You're from Long Beach originally, right?
Yeah, Long Beach, California. I was born and raised down there, and it was a great place to grow up, but my interests grew into natural settings a little bit more than Long Beach could offer. So I eventually got out.
I was going to say, do you think Long Beach, like California, there's a huge variety of interesting people, and that's in a good way. You think you contributing to the reason you got into Bigfoot as well?
Well, Long Beach is a fantastic place. It was a wonderful place to grow up. It really was. I'm a musician, so there's a great music scene I was involved in. All my friends, or most of my friends, were in bands, so I got to play with a bunch of different people, and I was exposed to a lot of things musically. And also Long Beach, if I remember right, it is actually I believe it's the most ethnically diverse city in the country, which is fantastic. So you have all these different kinds of music and different kinds of people and everything that all the different cultures contribute to society. It's all right there in this big bubbling cauldron and of coolness, like there's Brazilian stuff going on and there's African music. And I played in like Afrobeat bands, and I played with like Latino song makers, and I played with like singer songwriters and with like just amazing stuff. Oh, thanks, sweetie. Oh, I'm sorry. My wife just came in. But yeah, so I just a wonderful, wonderful opportunity to be exposed to just so many different things. So I'm not one of those people that new things scare me, because I came from that environment of such rich cultural diversity. And I mean, when I first started my education career, because I was a teacher for a long time, it was brought to my attention that I believe at the time, and I might have the number a couple off, but if I remember right, in Long Beach Unified School District, where I went to school, by the way, and I started my teaching. I didn't teach there, but I was a student aide there for many, many years, or a teacher's aide there before I got my teaching credential. There's something like 107 or 113 or somewhere right in there, different languages spoken in that one district. And that's phenomenal. It's phenomenal. Yeah. So I'm not one to shy away from new, unusual experiences. I'm really one that jumps right in and say, yeah, what is this about? Give it to me as hard as you got. Let's see what this is all about, man. And maybe that has something to do with my affinity towards eclectic eccentricity. I don't know, because I'm trapped in this head. I don't understand quite what made it this way.
It's like we can never. I'm trying to think of the thing. It's hard to judge ourselves, but people can judge us pretty well sometimes.
I suppose. But the thing about being a human being is that whenever you look around, essentially all you see is a mirror, So like if you think somebody else is a jerk, that probably means you're kind of a jerk too sometimes, or there's a jerkiness about you. If you think the world's scary and horrible, well, then what you're seeing is your own fear. The world is a mirror, and it only shows you what you already are. But most people don't realize that, though. And I guess I'm lucky enough to think that the world's a really amazing, exciting place, because maybe that is some sort of reflectivity of myself in a way, or I don't know. I mean, I don't know. I'm glad I'm not going to live forever, but the world's pretty amazing, and I'm pretty stoked to be here.
Yeah, exactly. So a lot of people know you from Finding Bigfoot. How did that show?
Well, a lot of people think they know me from Finding Bigfoot.
How did that show come about?
Well, as far as I'm concerned, I'd done some other TV stuff before, like Bobo and I were on Monster Quest, and, the Bob Saget thing, I got to play along with those guys for a little bit. But I got a call one day, basically, from somebody who works for Discovery Communications, and Discovery Communications owns Animal Planet, just like they own, they don't own, they own the Travel Channel and Destination America and a whole slew of channels, this one's sort of media conglomerate. Well, anyway, the guy there in charge of, I don't know what the word is, like casting or talent or whatever the word I'm looking for is, he called and said, hey, we're putting this show together about Bigfoot. And he kind of pitched it like, you can, the most dramatic, chase in, like, with funding and by air, sea, and water. And he was saying all the right buzzwords, right? And he goes, would you want to be involved in something like that? And I said, yeah, sure. Yeah. It's okay. Great. Well, why don't you send me a tape of yourself and we'll get back to you. And I did. I had some stuff like from YouTube and other stuff. And then I kind of forgot about it. And I don't know how he got my number. I mean, maybe Bobo or Matt kind of, nodded my direction because they were in talks with them as well. And I know during that period, a whole lot of people were put on cameras and had tapes submitted and stuff as well. But basically, near as I can figure, they showed all the tapes to focus groups, and I guess they liked me for whatever reason. And I kind of forgot about the whole thing until I think it was in May. So that guy called me in November. And then in May, Moneymaker calls me and he goes, hey, Cliff, you got the part. And I go, great. What do you mean? What are you talking about? Like, I'm glad I got it, but what are you talking about? And he goes, oh, remember that? And I went, no kidding, really? I'd kind of forgotten about all that. And that was in May. And then in June, right after school ended, and I was off for summer because I was an elementary school teacher at the time. We went and shot the Alaska pilot. So
did you ever think that show would be as popular as it was when it started?
Oh no, No, I figured it has some interest because everybody loves Bigfoot, or everybody who's cool loves Bigfoot. But I didn't think it was going to do what it did. I mean, it's a. I look back at it now, and contextually speaking, it's a very humbling experience. Because I was growing up in the 1970s watching In Search Of and things like that, and for the people growing up in the 2010s, teens or whatever, I don't know what to call that decade, well, that's like they're In Search Of, like somewhere out there in the world there is probably like a little Cliff, some weird little boy out there watching the Bigfoot show, and maybe the hook will be set in him and his interest, and he can go on to study something like paleoanthropology or ecology or biology, and then eventually do Bigfoot stuff too. And that's a humbling position to find yourself in. And I didn't realize it at the time, but as it went on, I started feeling the weight of responsibility on my shoulders in that sort of way.
Mhm.
Yeah, not only because I love the subject, but because I'm an educator, and I want young people to be appropriately excited and enticed and stimulated by what we're doing, to light their curiosity and send them out into the world to find out how wonderful and beautiful it really is. So
Yeah, exactly. And it's crazy. Like, I was surprised how long it went on myself, because you think of like TV shows when they can actually go that long and end out on their own terms. It's really
yeah,
rare, and especially
yeah.
for a subject like such as Bigfoot. That's just how I personally feel about it.
No, I agree with you. And, and the TV folks, the people who work in television tell me that most shows go about 2 seasons or so,
Hmm.
somewhere in there. If they're successful, they usually get another run, and then after that, 2, maybe 3 seasons max. So the fact that we went, for 9 years, well, that says something. And the only reason, from what I understand, the only reason we were eventually let loose, like not brought back, is because during that 9-year run that we had, like our numbers stayed really steady. We were very successful even to the end. But the thing about it is that cable television in general lost half their viewership in that same decade,
Mm.
because everybody was cutting the cable and going to Netflix and all the streaming services. So cable television lost half their revenue, and we were a successful show doing well. And the network, Animal Planet, they're a corporation. They care about money more than most other things. And they said, well, we could throw a lot less money at a brand new show and make about the same amount of money. Why don't we do that instead? So that's kind of my understanding, at least, of how it, or why, one of the reasons that it all ended, because our numbers were good till the end. So
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense though, because like when the show was getting older and older, like you said, Netflix and other streaming service, Hulu, they got bigger and
hmm
bigger.
yeah, exactly. A lot of changes happened in that decade. So
Yeah. So like on the show, you people have seen you playing guitar. Like, so how long have you been playing guitar, Cliff?
I started playing guitar when I was 13. My father had a guitar. He'd like pluck away at it and do a little bit of stuff. It was a classical guitar, nylon string guitar. And at that point, when I was 13, I just kind of gave up this idea that I was pretending to be interested in sports at all. Like we would go play kickball and tag, and they'd always want to play football, and I could care less about football or baseball. See, I'm not good to have on your team, because I don't care about winning. I just really don't care about winning at all. Like, that's not the goal. It's just like, hey, let's go play. Play is the
Yeah.
point. It's not winning, for me at least. But I was and still am a nerd. I just don't care about that stuff. I like competition, and I'm not competitive, but I like watching a good competition and all that sort of stuff. But I'm not interested in doing it. And so, like, I just kind of lost interest in all that stuff. And I figured, well, all my friends are out playing football in the street. Oh wait, what does this guitar thing do? And I started learning the campfire chords, and I was going to I was active in my church at the time, so I would like hang out with the youth minister, and he'd show me chords, and we'd play tunes and stuff. And you know and I went into high school and all that sort of stuff, and got in the band and started playing drums and everything else too. So eventually went on and got a degree in it all.
It's a great outlet too. I mean, and camping and playing music kind of go hand in hand for me. It's so much fun. Like,
Oh yeah.
who are your biggest influences in music? I gotta know.
Influences. And when I hear that word, I think, okay, who has made me change my style of playing, or who have I emulated, right? That kind of, if we're talking that kind of influences, and looking back on my interests in music over many, many years, I have to say that it varies. Like when I was much younger, when I first started playing the instrument, and like throughout the 1980s, believe it or not, my guitar influences were more like musical influences. Things like Adam and the Ants, like Marco Pirioni, the guitar player for that, kind of a Western new age, not new age, new wave, a Western new wave sort of thing. He's a very unusual guitarist in some ways. Adam and the Ants was a very unusual band in a lot of ways. And then like even stuff like Depeche Mode, even though there's no guitars at all in that band, I listened to the way they piece things together now, and I said, oh yeah, that was actually pretty influential on me. But around late high school or something, I started getting real weird, and I got into like Jimi Hendrix. So I that's Jimi Hendrix is the guy who introduced me to the blues, because at the end of the day, as innovative and amazing a guitar player Jimi Hendrix is, he's kind of just like this blues player on acid, like where every sound that comes out of his fingers is really interesting and beautiful in its own right. It doesn't have to necessarily follow the rules, but what he does is 100% based in the blues. And then from there, I got really heavily into the Grateful Dead. So Jerry Garcia is a phenomenal player. Not like kind of underappreciated, because they figured, oh, Jerry Garcia, those hippies and drugs and all this stuff. Like, so no. When Miles Davis was thrilled to play with the Grateful Dead in the early 70s, and he says, yeah, those guys can play. That says something, man. Like Jerry Garcia is a phenomenal guitar player, and Bob Weir, the rhythm player for the Grateful Dead. I really like what he does too, because a lot of what you do on guitar is about color. Color is if you're not a musician listening to this and you're thinking color, that's a visual thing, not an audio thing. Well, there's colors in music as well, and Bob Weir really knows how to paint a picture with his color. So and then I later got into jazz, and then my jazz heritage, so to speak, I took lessons from a phenomenal player, a guy named Ron Eschete. You should check him out on YouTube. It's Eschete. That's how you spell his last name. He's from Louisiana. He plays 7-string guitar, as do I now. But his teacher was Joe Pass. So my guitar lineage goes directly to Joe Pass. So that's kind of where I spend my my moments when I woodshed, and like when I sit down and I practice something, or I run scales, or I try to solo over changes. It's always in that vein, actually. So all of that stuff thrown in with this Bigfoot thing makes me who I am musically. So
Hey, that's the whole package, man. It's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
So this podcast is really based around the Bluff Creek film site, and so I got to ask you, Cliff, Patty, do you think it's possible that Roger Patterson and Bob Gimlin filmed a Bigfoot, or could it be a man in a costume?
I don't think it can be a man in a costume. I think that the evidence that's been collected at this point it makes it extremely unlikely that it is a guy in a costume. I think it is a Sasquatch. And I guess there's always room to be wrong. And I very often and welcome being wrong about most things, really. But yeah, I think that is a Sasquatch. I don't think it's really possible that Roger could have faked it,
Yeah, that's the thing I agree with too. And I always look back at that thing Jeff Meldrum has said about the scene in Planet of the Apes, that sauna scene. You see all the apes in the sauna, but you just see the costume. You don't see the clothes on the apes.
Yeah. And Planet of the Apes won an Academy Award for special effects and costumes, and that's the best they could do at the time.
And that was 67, 68?
But Planet of the Apes, I believe, came out in February of 68. So, just a few months after the film was taken, the Patterson-Gimlin film. So.
Yeah. So, I mean, personally, I don't see how Roger or Bob had the money to pay for something that extravagant at that time.
No, they definitely had the money. Even Aldi Atley, I don't think would have given them money to do that sort of thing. That just makes sense. Especially with knowing a little bit about the context of Roger's life at the time and afterwards as well.
That makes sense. I always thought they didn't have money, but I guess, like you said,
they didn't have a lot. Aldi Atley funded the trips, though, right? So Aldi Atley was Roger Patterson's brother-in-law. It was his wife Patricia's brother, and he gave them money to go around and do some things. I think he might have. I could be wrong. You want to fact check what I say, of course, but I believe that he was partially funding Roger's movie that he was making at the time as well.
I think I remember hearing something about that. I'll double check, and then if any of our listeners are listening, I hope they are. Double check too and let us know.
I hope the listeners are listening as well. Yeah. What would that mean if they weren't? Like, I'm going to turn this on and I'm going to mute it.
I'm going to play it in my car, but turn the volume all the way down.
Exactly. The silence would be deafening.
So Cliff, you've been Bigfooting in the Bluff Creek area for a long time.
Yes, it's 94.
Wow, that's so a year after I was born, or maybe a little less than that. I was born in 93.
Yeah.
What kind of experiences have you had in the Bluff Creek area?
I've had a lot of experiences in the Bluff Creek area. I'm assuming you're talking about Bigfoot experiences specifically. When I first started, like I told you, I ran across this book, couple books really. It was the Halpin and Ames book, Man Like Monsters on Trial. Well, and then there's another one, The Scientist Looks at the Sasquatch. Those are the two books that really influenced me in the beginning days. And then, of course, I found Grover Krantz's book because it had just been published, a year or two before when I like discovered this and blew my mind. So I take Grover's book and I say, I'm going to start camping in places where Bigfoot has been seen, and why not start at Bluff Creek? The very early days, I was young and even more foolish than I am now. And so I decided, well, I'm going to try to find the Patterson-Gimlin film site, and I thinking, like, I didn't realize at the time what a monumental undertaking and how ridiculous that was actually of me, like thinking that was just nonsense at the time. And so I got a map of Six Rivers National Forest. I think I ordered it somewhere, and of course, internet wasn't really so much a thing at that point. So I called the Forest Service office and found the right one, and they shipped it to me. And I started looking at Bluff Creek, and of course, there's no indication of where it was, especially back then. But I found, look at this. Bigfoot Creek flows into Bluff Creek. So I said, I'm going to go try that. Maybe that's why they named it that.
Yeah.
And of course, it wasn't why they named it that. Several years later, I actually learned that the local, I think it was the Yurok, might be. I think it's the Yurok who say this, and I could be wrong. It could be the Kruks, but that's where the Yurok say Sasquatches go to fish for salmon and steelhead. The pool where Bigfoot Creek flows into Bluff Creek, and maybe that's why they named it there. I don't really know, but I decided to go there, and so in '94 I decided to go there, and I drove up Fish Creek Road. I remember on that side of the hill. And luckily, like, somehow found my way down through the labyrinth of roads. And I was there with my friend Bob Easton, who's in a great band. You should probably check him out, actually. He's a professional musician in LA. He works for, I don't know the name of the academy, but Flea from the Chili Peppers and Norwood from Fishbone. Those guys have made a musical academy in the inner city, in Watts, actually. And Bob, I believe, is the guy who runs that school. But Bob's band is called Delta Nove. They're fantastic. They take like Parliament Funkadelic style music and combined it with like Brazilian samba. It's fantastic music. And but anyway, so he and I went out there and went camping for a week or something. And on my first run out, I got footprints. They still look like footprints to me. I don't know, maybe they're not, but they're about 14 inches long and whatever else. And I said, wow. Unbelievable. This is easy, and then like nothing happened for a long time after that. It was just beginner's luck, basically. But it was Bluff Creek, as you know, is such a beautiful, beautiful area. I just fell in love with it. Like I said, Bigfoots or not, I would come here anyway. So I did. I think I've been to Bluff Creek every year since then, save like maybe 4 years now or something like that. And sometimes I went 2-3 times in a year. Because I was a teacher, so I had summers off,
Oh yeah, and then you're just like, I'm just gonna go on a siesta out there.
Yeah,
Well,
exactly.
you're not really sleeping, but
No, but my heart is resting, you know.
um. So speaking of footprints, how you have a pretty large track collection. How big? How many tracks in your collection do you have?
I don't know. I really don't know. I it depends how you count them. You know, like people ask me that, and I go, well, do you count fakes, like the hoaxed footprints? And if they say no, okay, so okay, well, let's see. Do you count like orang pendek footprints? You know, and then well, no, just Bigfoot. It's like, well, then I'm guessing, I don't know, maybe 250 or so. I don't really know. Over 200. I think yeah, I don't know. I really don't know. Over 200 easily, and probably upwards towards 300. But it gets a little muddy there because some of them are like the London tracks; those are fake, and like the LB tracks, those are fake. And but that's 100 right there between the LB tracks and the London tracks. So
Yeah,
it's hard to say, but a couple hundred, maybe close to 50, 300, somewhere in there. I don't know.
yeah. I don't mean to brag. I have three myself, but
Well, that's a good start. I started with one. You know.
I think two of them that I have are from you, and then one of them is actually from Meldrum,
hmm hmm
which is pretty cool. So those are collecting casts are pretty fun. I like doing it.
I like it. You know where I got my first one? Back in the day, and this is the early days of the internet, because that's how old I am, Tate. I remember rotary phones and dial-up and pre-dial-up when no such thing existed. My brother was like, "Hey, check out this thing. It's called the internet." And I go, "What the?" And it's like, he said, "You can look up anything." And I go, "No, okay, look up Bigfoot." And I did. And like the only thing there, I think Peter Byrne had a thing for his Bigfoot research project. The Shadowlands Bigfoot page was up because that's still up, and I can't believe it. And Dr. Grover Krantz was selling footprint casts online with the help of graduate student. I think his name was Ira Walters, if I remember right. And he had a number of casts for sale. And I mean, I was a broke kid at that point, so I couldn't afford very much. And then my very first cast was the Freeman knuckle print, and the I think I saved up and I got the Gigantopithecus cast that he actually sold as an ashtray until he found out that the coating he put on it might be flammable, and he couldn't sell it as an ashtray anymore. And then I got a Patterson Gimlin cast from Grover as well. I never met the man. I wish I did. He's very influential on me. But yeah, those are my three first casts: is the Gigantopithecus blackie jawbone, the mandible, and the Freeman knuckles, and then the Patterson Gimlin right foot. So
Those are I have the Patterson Goodman right foot. Then I have Grays Harbor Washington one. I think that's the one you made and I bought from you.
yeah.
Then I bought another Bluff Creek, but it was a couple of years I think before the PG film. But Roger took that one. So,
Probably the Laird Meadow cast.
yeah, I think it is. Was it? What year was that? Do you
It
know?
was 63.
63. So before the film.
Although I'd like to point out, Roger himself wrote in his book that it was 1964. And there seems to be some sort of mistake because I recently, and this is like in the last 2 months, I was told by a guy named David Murphy, who was at one point supposed to write a biography of Roger Patterson with Patricia's blessing. He said, "No, I saw the cast. It said 1963 on the back." And I said, "Well, that'd be really interesting information because, in history, you always go to the primary source.
Yeah.
Roger's book says 1963, but if the original footprint cast itself, did I say 19? Well, anyway, Roger says 1964 in his book. I don't know what I just said. I heard 63 when I said it, but in Roger's book, he claims a cast of 1964. But if the original print itself says 1963 on the back, we kind of have to go with that. And sure enough, just like in the last month or two, David was kind enough to dig up his photographs and send it to me. And sure enough, on the back of the prints, it says 1963. So it turned out Roger Patterson's own book was wrong about when he cast those footprints.
Maybe he's got all his notes jumbled up and couldn't remember. And it's like
Maybe he did
something like that. Who would have the original cast of that Laird Meadow or the Patterson trackway, the Patterson Gimlin trackway?
They're in possession of the Patterson family. Roger Patterson's family controls the right and left prints that they took at the Patterson-Gimlin film site that day, as well as the cast, the Laird Meadow cast. There's a right and left for those two. And then there's also a cast, let's see, where was it? It was taken up there on the Lewis River, I believe, near the Swift Reservoir by south of Mount St. Helens. There was another cast. The family name escapes me, but I have access to the information as well.
Have you seen the original cast? Or?
No, I have pictures of them. I have photographs of them taken by David Murphy, but I've never seen the originals with my own eyes.
That would be super incredible to see those in person.
Oh yeah, it would be. It's like back in the day, I went into the Willow Creek Museum and I said, "Hey, I'm here. I'd love to. I'm visiting. Blah blah blah. I'd love a chance to photograph some of the originals," and they let me do it. They just I said, "Yeah, well, we're going to be working in the front office and we're going to be here about 2 or 3 hours. Here's the keys. Go nuts." And I did. So I went and I said, "Holy crap." And I went through and I photographed every single specimen in the Willow Creek Museum. I signed a waiver that I can't use it for books or movies or anything like that. But I don't care. I have them for my own resources, and I think that's amazing that they were kind enough to do that.
That's awesome. And
yeah, so holding the pattern, holding the cast from the Patterson-Gimlin film site that Bob Titmus took in my hand, and they're very, very thin and very, very fragile. And I'm like this is like as fragile as a premature baby, and I'm like holding this thing and like, oh my God, it's amazing. It was phenomenal.
Some of those tracks in that museum are huge too, and they're surprising. It's amazing how something like that can leave a track like that size.
Yeah, but don't forget, and I say this at all my conference appearances, like the footprint is not the shape of the foot. It's the shape of the damage done to the ground by the foot as the creature walks by. Because even like the original Bigfoot creature, which is what the Laird Meadow cast represents, by the way, that's the original Bigfoot, the name of the individual animal that left his footprints back in 1958. It's the same animal. His feet were about 16 inches, more or less, a little bit more maybe. But yet footprints range from about 16 to about 18 and a half or more. And we have samples from the Blue Mountains of the same individual where it was standing still in a seep, like in a spring, and the feet are about 14 inches long, the wrinklefoot footprints. But there's other prints of that same individual that are over 18 inches long because of sliding and all that other stuff. Like it was sliding and going up or down hills, sliding, and the ones with elongation. Like I'm thinking of the rock footprint. I think it's from 1986. Then probably 6 or 84. I'm not sure, but there's a big rock in the middle of it, and it's very large. That's the wrinklefoot individual. Mm-hmm. But the thing is, it slid into it, and when it slid in, the toes splayed out really, really widely to kind of stop it, almost like a break. But it stepped on this giant rock, so who can blame it, right?
Exactly.
It had to hurt. I don't care if you're a Bigfoot or not. That had to hurt a little.
That would not be fun at all.
No, like a Lego does it to me, man. Let alone a rock that size.
I wish I had Legos, to be quite honest with you, but I don't. Sad.
I gave them all to my nephews when they were born. I don't have mine anymore either.
They're fun, man. I don't care what age you are. You could be 80 years old and still having a blast with Legos. That's just how I feel.
Oh, I'm with you. It's about creativity. It's about creating something instead of tearing things down. And Legos are all about like, okay, you create this and it's momentary and it's temporary, and then you can take it apart and make something else out of it.
They're like
it's amazing.
Logs.
Yeah, I love those too.
So I got a question, Cliff, because I've always thought about this. People say they have weird experiences out Bigfooting. Some get like vivid dreams and stuff like that. I always thought like with vivid dreams, could it be like sleep paralysis? Because weird things can happen in that kind of state of sleep or awake, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah. Well, like when I'm out Bigfooting, no, I kind of feel left out of the party on that one because I have never once had anything truly bizarre happen to me while I was out Bigfooting. I've been with Bobo, who's a pretty bizarre individual, and he's had things happen. I was standing right next to him, and he saw flashes of light in the trees. I didn't see him. We were up at the headwaters of Blue Creek once, and he saw what he describes as a basketball-sized blue orb cruising around in the woods. I didn't see it. So I don't know. I have yet to experience anything. And I mean, the most unusual thing I can think of tend to be coincidences, I think. And of course, people out there, the paranormal folks, there it is, Cliff, you blew it. You're not looking at it the right way. So, well, I don't know. Bobo and I were camping out there at Bluff Creek way back before the show. I mean, Bobo and I've been camping at Bluff Creek since 2005 or something like that. And we had indications that Sasquatches might be around, and I set up my recorder. And at the time, there was no such thing as like an all-night recorder. I had a mini disc player, and mini discs are great technologies, but they only last a few hours, before the batteries die or the disc needs to be changed or something like that. And I had that running, and we fell asleep. And then I noted the time, by the way, I went to bed and started the recorder. And then just moments after the mini disc player stopped, I was already asleep. Something was in the brush next to us, and it basically screamed at us, made a really weird sort of hissing growl sort of noise from 40, 50, 60 feet away or something, I'm guessing. And it woke Bobo and I up. And I go, oh my God, that whole thing. And I checked the recorder, and of course it had ended. And paranormal people would say, there you go. It blah, blah, it knew. But, the mini discs they're digital, but they're kind of analog in some other ways. Like they actually spin. And I think it would just hurt it. I think Sasquatches depend a lot on their hearing. And when that thing stopped, then it, let us know that it didn't like us being there.
Yeah.
If that was a Sasquatch. So.
And it's funny, you see like the recording stopped, but other people were like, oh, Bigfoot did it and messed up the technology or messed up the recorder. But we use Occam's razor a lot, like the most logical reason is probably the reason things happened.
I try to go with logic, just because it should be the first stop on anybody's trip into the unknown is like what makes most sense here, and I think in this case, the hearing thing, does. But maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. Maybe they are interdimensional UFO riding shapeshifting whatevers. I don't know. I don't think so, but
we're riding unicorns.
Yeah. Who wouldn't?
I mean, there's one picture I saw, just like a drawing of one riding the Loch Ness Monster. That'd be a really cool team right there. Of course. Personally, is how I feel. So I want to go back to Finding Bigfoot again, Cliff.
Sure.
The finale episode was in Willow Creek. How emotional did you guys feel filming that? Like, it was the last episode.
It was of course sad, because we knew it was over at that point. But also kind of a relief as well, because we've been doing it a long time at that point, and filming a TV show, and especially our TV show, it was kind of grueling. Honestly, it took a lot out of me. It really wore me down to practically nothing sometimes. Because it's not glamorous, at all. And we filmed 6 days a week, usually 8 to 18 hours a day. Although sometimes it's less, not very often, and sometimes more. We've literally worked 22, 23-hour days before.
Jeez.
That's just the way it is. And you do it 6 days a week, so that one day off, which is usually Sunday, because Bobo refuses to work on holy days. And for him, that means football. Yeah. So like whenever the football games are on, he wouldn't work, or he'd pout about it essentially. But other guys on the other people, I should say, were into the football thing too, because some of the women were into that too. But and that one day off a week was very often spent trying to find a beer, or doing laundry essentially. So there's not a whole lot of glamour going on. Oh, there you go. Yeah. So and being on the road 7-8 months a year sometimes can take a lot out of you. Especially when you have a place you want to be, like home. So in a way, it was the end is always a kind of a bittersweet sort of thing. But it was great, man. What a good way to go out, celebrating the 50th and hanging out with Bob Gimlin again. And it's always a pleasure to see Bob. And, my friends were there, all the California people that I, Bigfooted with, and Bart Cotino and Bobo and Leiterman and everybody. You guys were there, and my wife was there. Like, it was great. It was great. It was like, and finally pushing forward with the Bill Munns thing, because Beck George's copy of the PG film had come out, and apparently it's a first generation from the original. Yeah. So knowing that more work is yet to come on the PG film was really exciting way to end it.
It was amazing. That was the first time I met think that was the first time I met Melissa, your brother, that Bart.
Oh yeah, my brother was there too. Totally forgot about that too. So
Yeah, he was there. First time I ever met Rowdy, kind of a cool guy.
yeah, that's a consolation prize. No, I'm just kidding. I love Ratty. I'm just heckling him because I'm assuming he'll probably listen to this at some point. So.
I'm sure all the Bluff Creek guys will be able to listen to this. Really.
Oh, good.
So you're solo camping at on that episode. You were with Robert Leiterman, a member of the Bluff Creek Project. How was that time?
Oh, it was cool. It was really cool because the water spot, which is the name we use for that place because we don't want it to be publicly known, where we went, was very, very productive for several years until you guys started putting cameras there. It would always produce Bigfoot stuff. So I kind of wonder about that one. Coincidence? I wonder. But it was great for many, many years. Some of the most intense, weird Bigfoot stuff I've ever encountered has been at that spot. And it had been cut off. No one had been there since the previous, fall, basically, I assume, because the roads were covered in snow still. No one had been in there except for, and you guys went in there the previous fall. So the hike in there with Robert and those guys and get the cameras and just trip around in there for a while was a lot of fun. And I love that spot too. I've actually been very close to Sasquatches there, in my opinion, on a number of occasions, and found footprints there on a number of occasions as well.
Yeah.
As has Dr. Meldrum.
And it's a great area. That whole area is probably my favorite area to be in. Mm-hmm. And just so people can get an idea, that's a pretty far walk, I'm assuming, from where you guys probably had to leave vehicles, right?
Yeah, it was a turn off of the Go Road where we had to leave the vehicles. So it was a few miles in. It wasn't like 15 miles or anything, but it was a few miles in.
It's a fun walk.
It was cool.
You told a story about you and Bobo there to Robert. You guys were trying to trick. You guys, I don't like the word trick. You were kind of getting one in, and you kind of didn't Bobo laugh or something. You guys were pretending to be asleep.
Oh yeah. That was one of the. Yeah, see, I had found that spot, and Bobo already knew about this spot because you aren't going to find a place in Bluff Creek where Bobo hasn't been. He's been working that spot, I think, since the 80s. You'd have to ask Bobs about that, but yeah. But I kind of stumbled across that spot when I was doing one of my solo trips up there. It's like a week and a half or 2 weeks alone at Bluff Creek. And I said, let's go try this spot. It looks interesting on the map. And when I got there, it was really interesting, right? And I'm driving on the road between the marshes, and something caught my eye in the woods, and I go out and I found a really interesting tree break. I said, that's kind of cool. And I started like looking at it. I noticed that it was on a small game trail, and the break was in the direction of where the game trail changed directions 90 degrees at that spot. And the tree break was pointing down the game trail or up the game trail, depending on what direction you're going, I guess. And so I followed the game trail, and I found another tree break where the trail turned 90 degrees. And so I followed it that direction. And this happened 2 more times. So I found 4 tree breaks over a 250-yard stretch or so, always at a place where the trail changed directions, and I continued to follow it. And at the last time, it went into this cluster of trees, which would have been the place you wanted to travel if you're going between the 2 marshes and want to stay out of cover, stay out of sight rather, stay under cover. Mm-hmm. And then I found a footprint there, a 14-inch footprint at the end of it all. And I went, this is it. This is awesome. This is cool. So I was all stoked. Yeah, I'm going to camp here tonight. And I started heading back to my car, and about halfway back to my truck, I got scared. Nothing happened. I just got really, really scared all of a sudden. And I couldn't explain it. And I was like, whoa, what in the world? And like goose, like what in the world's going on? And I said, I can't stay here. This is terrifying. It was like in the middle of the day. And by the way, I'd already been camping for over a week alone at that point at Bluff Creek.
That's weird.
So it was totally weird. And I think that looking back, if I had ever been a subject of infrasound or something like that, that was probably it. I don't know. Because I didn't feel any vibrations. I just got scared for no apparent reason. So funny enough, I hopped in my car and I drove down the road to this other high water lake a few miles away called Mosquito Lake. So I drove there and camped there that night. And I had 3 bears around camp that night. They were kind of hassling me and stuff, but like I wasn't scared like I was previously. It was a hell of a day too. I ended up getting 2 flat tires that day. But anyway, the rock slide at the Patterson-Gimlin film site on that road took one and then another one. But anyway, so when I talked to Bobo next, because I knew Bobo at that point, I mentioned the spot and he goes, "Oh yeah, dude, I go there." And so we went there the next year, and then all hell broke loose when we were there. I think we had 2, maybe 3 of them around us, and we heard the chirp whistles and there was knocking going on back and forth. And then we were at the campsite in the hill above us. This is what you asked about originally.
Mm-hmm.
We heard something creeping around up on top of the hill, and we already knew Bigfoots, or we were satisfied Bigfoots were in the area at that point. So we figured, well, maybe that's one, and we're listening to it. So Bubba goes, "Hey, let's try this." And we were both outside. We just sleep on the ground. There's no tents or anything. And Bubba started fake snoring, just like, and over the next 15, 20 minutes or more, whatever it was creeping down the hill, and we can hear it every once in a while. And it was closer and closer and closer every time. And eventually it just became too much for us. And we burst out laughing because it was working. It's like, oh, this is ridiculous. It's working. And then whatever it was, we could hear it like running up the hillside after that when its cover was blown. So that's kind of an interesting little story at that spot. So
I think you've told me that story before, and I always thought that was like a cool story. Maybe Robert told me, I can't remember. But I remember I heard it before.
Mm-hmm.
It had to be from you or Robert, because it had to be from somebody.
Yeah, sure.
So you go out Bigfooting pretty often, right? And then
it's been a little less this past year because of the museum, honestly. But yeah, I used to go every chance I got, But now I've made an anchor for myself that I need to be home because I work at the museum. It's just my wife and I that work there at this point. But hopefully we're going to pick up an employee in the next month or so, and that'll free me up a little bit more.
That'll help for sure.
Yeah.
What kind of methods would you like to use? Like unique methods? What kind of ideas would you want to do? There has to be something like on your horizon that would be, oh, this would be fun to do or try out.
Oh, what I want to do in the future, or what I tend to do?
What you want to do in the future in the field investigating?
There's a couple things going on right now that I think are interesting possibilities. The first thing you need to do is do something unusual, I think, and that's true all the time. Like I've had success in the past with things like slide whistles and noisemakers, and being on Finding Bigfoot, that was our MO, man. We do big ridiculous nonsense in the woods in hopes of drawing attention.
Yeah.
But it's always about that, because the other option is like sitting in a tree stand for 7 hours, and that's it's not that great. It's not that fun. And I'm out there for other reasons. I used to be so focused on getting Bigfoot evidence and whatnot. And I've kind of mellowed a bit in my old age, that I realized that it's probably more effective to go for other reasons. And if Bigfoots show up, that's great too. So I try to go out for other reasons and just enjoy things. But some things I'd like to try. I'm working with this guy. His name's Kevin. He's a PhD, actually. He's down in Eugene. He's a good friend of mine, a native gentleman as well. He's Skokomish Indian. He has been working on recording infrasound, and I know there's some other units and stuff from, I think it's Cornell University has some units that can record infrasound if you have the right microphone and stuff. And you have to have special equipment, because it makes perfect sense that you can't go walk in a Guitar Center and buy microphones and recorders that record sounds that humans can't hear.
Yeah,
that makes perfect sense. They're very hard to get, but there are some things out there. So this guy's been working on infrasonic recording, and I was talking to him about it and his setup and everything. This is a few months ago now, and he mentioned something. He goes, yeah, there's certain frequencies that when I play them back, they make me feel weird. Like, oh yeah, that makes sense. And I said, wait a minute, you play them back? He says, yeah, I can set up my subwoofer in a way that I can play them back and I can feel it and stuff, and they make me feel weird sometimes. And he told me the frequency. I just forget what it was. And I said, well, hey man, maybe can you play them loud? He says, well, it's really hard to get because lower frequencies, you need so much more energy to put them out.
Yeah.
But he said, so we started kicking around this idea of what if we went out and did call blasting with infrasound? because to my knowledge, no one has ever done that before. And if Sasquatches do use infrasound, it seems like a very reasonable thing to try because they would be able to hear it. I don't know if it'd make me crap my pants or whatever, like, you know, the brown note sort of thing or whatever, but I'm up for it. I'm willing to take one for the team if that happens, man. But how cool would that be to go to some mountaintop where it's nice and quiet and then blast some ridiculous volume that we can't hear of infrasound just to see what comes back? And of course, if Sasquatches reply in infrasonic frequencies, we won't know unless, you know, Kevin has a recorder that records it and stuff, but we won't know it. But it might draw them in too. So I think that's a really fascinating angle that no one, to my knowledge at least, has tried yet. So,
well, if that would be, that would be a first, because obviously to have the equipment to record that would be expensive, and who would have the knowledge to do that, or even play it back? But I've never thought of that. That's super cool.
It's super interesting, right? Yeah. And of course, there's also the very real possibility, like as in the case of tigers, that see, when tigers vocalize, you can hear it, but there's infrasonic frequencies buried in there. So it's possible Sasquatches might call back and have infrasonic frequencies that you might be able to visually detect in like some sort of like a sonic visualizer sort of thing.
I wonder why bears don't do it, or I wonder
they might.
They might. But it makes sense that a Bigfoot can do it. But at the same time, it should make sense that a bear could do it. But who knows how? Maybe. Who knows how animals like that, like a tiger or a Bigfoot, can do something like that? It's just,
to my knowledge, I don't think that there's ever been a survey of North American animals that use it. I know they have certain, like they know alligators use it, but I don't think anyone's gone out and done a survey of mammals, for example, that can use infrasound in North America. So there's some interesting things for any like biology students or something that might be listening that is looking for a really interesting research project that you can apply to other areas of biology that also happen to apply well to Sasquatch stuff. So
yeah, exactly.
And that's the way to do it. If you're like a professional scientist, you kind of like hide that thing in the corner of your study. Like, I'm going to study elk and moose to see if they use infrasound, and then like, well, and I'm going to figure out if these guys do too at the same
time. People should do a lot more research on that. That'd be interesting to find out, and I hope you guys can do that soon, because I would love to hear results and see what happens, or hear what happens.
Yeah, but I think by definition you couldn't hear the results, though. That's the irony of the whole thing. Although you could play it back at higher speeds and raise the frequency up. That's how people find out if there's infrasonic I mean, they look at it, of course, but you can actually play a recording of infrasound faster. And you know, you play like somebody speaking, it raises the pitch of their voice. Well, you can do that with infrasound too. So
yeah, just speed it up and it gets like louder in a human range of hearing.
Yeah, that's just like one sample. You know, there's other things that I'm sure it would be really fascinating to try and whatnot. But you know, that's one that jumped in my head that it's pretty novel. I think it's kind of exciting.
That's definitely a great idea. I would never have thought of that. So you and your wife have opened a museum in Bourne, Oregon. What prompted that move?
Oh, well, you know, once Finding Bigfoot ended, I was just doing conferences and stuff for a living, and you don't make much money. I didn't, you know, it's you could live on it, but it's just hard to do so, you know. And I was thinking, well, you know what? I guess I could go back to teaching or whatever. But maybe I've been so blessed so far with this Bigfoot thing. Maybe my blessings will continue, you know. And Dave Becerra happened to be around at that time. I was talking to Dave, who owns Expedition Bigfoot out in outside of Blue Ridge, Georgia, a little town called Cherry Log, I believe. And Dave is just a lovely, lovely man, like really encouraging and kind and supportive and everything. And he mentioned to me, he says, Cliff, you probably have a bunch of Bigfoot junk lying around. Why don't you try to open a museum? Because I've been successful with it. It's feeding my family, paying my bills. And I think with your, you know, Bigfoot celebrityhood or whatever, and all the stuff, you could probably do a pretty good one. And I thought, well, you know what, maybe I can. And it kind of fell into the same category as my professional educator career, because essentially museums are places of learning. And so you know what? So I talked to Dave about how he did it, and I visited his museum to kind of see how his layout was. And I had been to Lauren's museum, so I'd already had a primer with him. Lauren Coleman's excellent museum up in Portland, Maine, the International Cryptozoology Museum. I've been there, and Lauren's always been very, very supportive and kind to me as well. So I kind of borrowed what those two guys did. Oh, and also Mike Rugg. I don't want to forget Mike Rugg down in Santa Cruz, California. I've been to his museum, the little museum that could, is the way he describes it, like just to keep on going and going and going. And so I'd been to these 3 museums, and there's a handful of others out there, not many, but there's a handful of others out there. And so I kind of just borrowed what I liked of each of those, and I made myself the coolest 5th grade science project possible on Bigfoot, and opened it up to the public. With help from friends, of course. Scott Minton was super valuable to help us get us off the ground. And a lot of friends have really chipped in and helped. Dr. Meldrum has been very supportive and kind. He's lent me things from his laboratory to put in the museum and, that sort of stuff. So we got that up and running fully last October, cruising along. And I was told, hey, expect to lose money for 2 years because you're a brand new business. Well, I mean, we weren't making any, but we weren't losing any either. Which was
limbo state.
Yeah. We were paying our bills almost right out of the gate. Breaking even, I said, wow, this might actually work, and then, January and February came around, and I had the arrogance to take a small, paycheck because I was working, 40, 50, 60 hours a week on this thing. So I decided, it's my business. Maybe I can take a paycheck. And I did. And then the plague hit. And then this whole the COVID-19 thing hit, and we had to close down for 3 months. It was horrifying. It was just horrifying because whatever money I had set aside from my TV gig, all went into the museum.
Yeah.
I'm thinking, what, man, am I just going to kiss that money goodbye and never see it again? So I just kind of went out on my Facebook and social media and said, hey guys, we're screwed. Help. If you can help, that'd be great. And of course, I never asked for anything for nothing. So I basically quickly figured out how to make an online store and figured out what shipping might be and whatever else. And I still haven't got all that nailed down, but the Bigfoot community really stepped up for me, and I couldn't be more grateful. It's just fantastic that the love, basically. I mean, I don't know how else to put it. The love that people have of the subject and their support really saw me and my family through all this. So we're open again. We've been open for 2 weeks again as of yesterday. And the numbers I don't think are good summer numbers because no one's traveling right now. Everybody's still scared and staying home, and I don't blame them, right? But we're doing good winter days right now, and which is good enough. We're not going to go under, and we're doing our best to give everybody the best educational experience about Sasquatches that they can. I wish Kip was here. Kip actually came to the museum maybe before we closed, and he had very positive things to say. And heck, man, even Aaron Swepston, the skeptic on the coalition of whatever critical thinking something or other board, even he came in and had positive things to say. God, if I can sway Aaron, I got it down, man.
Kip actually said I think one of our episodes, he mentioned the museum and how awesome it was.
Well, that's nice of him. I appreciate it. I walk through it and I go, God, I have so much more work to do here. But everybody else seems to really like it and stuff, but it's not where I want it to be yet. It's definitely good enough, good enough to open and stuff. But what I envision in my mind is probably going to take a few years. It's like when you first you move into a new place and you're looking at the garden. You're going, well, I can start, but it doesn't come to fruition for a couple of years. And I think that's how I feel about this. It's my Bigfoot garden kind of,
Yeah, that's a great analogy too. I lent you that video that I recorded or filmed of the interview of Bob Gimlin.
Yeah, it is playing every single day. People love it.
I was going to ask, I was like, how do people like that? How's that reception going? Because that's probably the newest interview of Gimlin, and at the film site in front of a landmark in the film. And
yeah,
I thought that's historical kind of video, and the full video is playing at your museum.
Oh, no, the audio is playing.
Oh, the audio.
Yeah, because you specifically told me don't show the video, so I didn't.
Oh, but okay. So I'll tell you now. I am public to everybody. If you want to show the video, you can.
Oh, really? Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, that might be we're gonna do an expansion actually on the Patterson Gimlin thing, because I don't own the rights to the film, and I'm not gonna step on the Patterson family's rights because they own the intellectual property of the film. So I'm not gonna show the film until I get their permission, and I just haven't reached out to them, and I don't know what it would cost me because everything costs money, But I do have a lot of the casts on display. And Dr. Russ Jones, lent me an original 1968 tour poster from when Patterson took the film on tour. I have one of those, and I've got sand and sticks and stuff from the film site and everything. But the cool thing about it, and this is where I'm going with this, your footage will be fantastic addition, because one of the things I have planned, because I can afford this, and hopefully by July I can get it up and running. I've been in contact with Eric DeHinden lately. Eric, of course, is Renee DeHinden's son, and Renee owned all the film stills from the Patterson Gimlin film. He owns all the rights. So I reached out to Eric and introduced myself, and I said, hey, I want to do this. In the back of Dr. Kranz's book, and there's also examples, I think, in one of Chris Murphy's books, where they took some of the frames of Patty walking away from the camera, where her foot is perpendicular to the ground, and you can see the entirety of the underside of her foot. Mm-hmm. So what I want to do is I want to put her footprint cast next to a picture of that foot, and then blow the frame up so the cast is the same size as the bottom of her foot, right? And if I do that, it should more or less, within a couple inches at least, be Patty's real size. Now there's a little picture of that in the back of Dr. Kranz's book, of course, and in Chris Murphy's book as well. But no one, to my knowledge at least, has ever done that to the full real size with a footprint cast instead of a picture of the foot.
Yeah.
So Eric gave me permission to use that frame for that purpose in the museum. And he was kind enough to do it for free as well. Eric and I have been talking a little bit, but I'd like to think maybe we're kind of friends a little bit. I don't know the man very well. I've never hung out with him, but we talk for a couple hours when I call. So, that's pretty friendly, I think, I wouldn't be so presumptuous to say that he's a friend of mine, because I don't know how he feels about it, but we do have great conversations when I call. So we're planning on expanding the Patterson Gimlin film thing. So if you since you've given me permission to use the film, that would be an excellent addition to that section. So thank you. Appreciate that.
Yeah. I was like, man, if there's one place I wanted to have being shown the entirety video of, it'd be the museum, your museum.
I appreciate that. That's very kind of you.
It's not available anywhere else. There's like a minute of it on YouTube. That's about it.
Yeah, it's Bob kind of walking through everything while standing at the film site itself. I mean, that's historic. That's amazing. And yeah, very, very generous of you. And again, it's one of the things about the Bigfoot community is that I'd like to think that I'm doing some good things, there's a lot of haters out there that would disagree and stuff and whatever, but I'd like to think my heart's generally in the right place, and I try to do good work, and I'm honest, and I have integrity, I think, and I think when you do that, people stand behind you, and they help you, and you're one of the people that has helped me, and I appreciate that. I really do, because you can't do this alone.
Yeah, and I can say that you're definitely there, and you have a lot of support from friends and family. I've had a lot of support from you and the Bluff Creek guys and all that. And I've been blessed myself, so I enjoy it too. There's some good people, and there's also haters.
Yeah, but the haters, like I said, man, people only see themselves. And the people are out there tearing other people down. And don't get me wrong, I've been rude to people too. And I've had bad days. Like just a couple months ago, a fake print came across my desk, and I was less than respectful to one of the guys I talked to about it. But then again, I was having, my business was going under. I had a lot of stuff was going on that he didn't know about, but I feel bad about that. We all make mistakes. The only thing you can do is try to be a good person and try to do good work and move ahead,
Yeah.
So. We all have bad days, and hopefully we don't take a snapshot of somebody and assume that is that person. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Forever. So
Never judge a book by its cover, because you can like have one perception, but when you meet them, it could be completely different.
oh yeah, there's so many people who are just dicks online, but you get them in person and they're actually kind of okay, or even likable. But it's like, what is it about being online that turns you into an asshole? I've never understood that.
That's what we were talking to Steven a couple weeks ago, and he was saying, like, I'll be talking to some person online and I'll see them at a conference and they're like totally buddy.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
weird.
Yeah. I just don't get it. Yeah. People are weird. You know, I heard a quote recently, and it turns out I said it, which I think is hilarious because but yeah, my friend told me this quote. He says, it's like you said, Cliff. I go, what did I say? Because God knows what I said, you know. I say so much and I don't always agree with what I say sometimes, you know. But he says, yeah, you once told me that Bigfooting would be great if it wasn't for all the people. So like, well, okay, I can kind of see that. But on the flip side of that, some of my best friends, I mean, most of my best friends are in the Bigfoot community. Not
Yeah.
all of them, but most of them. And it's like the people really make it wonderful and a loving place, you know, because otherwise you're out in the woods alone, which I enjoy too. But, you know, after 2 or 3 weeks of being alone in the woods, you start like going, man, I should check out what so-and-so's doing. You know? find
It's kind of getting lonely out here.
yeah, because like you know, sometimes there's been a few times I've been out for a few weeks or whatever, and I had to take a good hard look at myself. It's like, what the hell are you doing?
Exactly. So you and Bobo started a podcast, Bigfoot and
Yeah.
Beyond. What was the reason you guys wanted to do that?
Well, you know, part of it was because people kept asking, what are you doing, man? Like, when can we see you and Bobo and everybody else on, you know, TV, or what do you got, you know, what are you up to? Like, everybody seemed pretty interested in what was going on. And then one day Bobo and I were talking on the phone because he and I, you know, we're really good friends. You know, we talk probably every week or two at the most, or I'm sorry, at the least, every week or two at the least. And it was like, you know what, maybe we should try one of these podcast things. Because Bobo was listening to a lot of podcasts. I still don't listen to podcasts. I don't even listen to my own. I do these podcasts and I don't even listen to them. But Bobo loves podcasts and he listens to them all the time. And he goes, why don't we do that? You know, why don't we try that? I mean, Wes over there, Sasquatch Chronicles, he's successful at it. He makes money on it. You know, I guess there's money to be made from it. And Bobo's and I were thinking, well, let's try this since everybody's asking us what we're up to, and we talk all the time anyway. Why don't we just record it and throw it out there for people?
Yeah.
And that way they can know. And so we did, and people really took to it. You know, I was very, very. Again, I'm blessed and humbled by the Bigfoot community, kind of rallying behind what we're doing. And of course, for a lot of people, you know, they had 9 years of finding Bigfoot, and they would invite us into their living room every Sunday night. And I see it all the time. We're basically family to them. You know, I've never seen this person in my life, but like oh my God, this guy right here, he grew up watching you and we're part of the family. You know, it's like, well, this is an opportunity to invite people back in. And without the confining things about TV, you know, no cameras following you around, you know, to worry about lights in the woods and, you know, that sort of stuff. We just talk about Bigfoot stuff. And sometimes it's just Bobo and I talking. Sometimes we have guests on, you know, we had Steve on from, you know, Bluff Creek Project, et cetera. And it's taken a life of its own. People seem to really, really enjoy it. We're expanding some stuff now. We're kind of revamping things. We're trying to up our production game a little bit, because at first it was like me and Bob's on Skype and, hey, well, Cliff, what's going on? We got an editor, Matt Pruitt, who's one of the best Bigfooters out there, period. He's on the board of directors for the North American Wood Ape Conservancy, et cetera. He's our editor, and which is nice because I really like having an editor. That's something I miss from television, because I say stupid stuff, man. And I, you know, like I said, I don't even agree with everything I say. So it's nice to have somebody kind of watching your back. You know, it's in real life, like I'm talking blah, 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 and I go, oh God, did I just say that? That sounds like it's something an idiot would say. I'd love to turn around and go, hey, editors, take that out of the mix, would you? But so we have an editor now. And again, Wes from Sasquatch Chronicles has been so supportive of us. He says that we're one of his favorite podcasts, and coming from someone who's as wildly successful as Wes, that's a big compliment. He's become a friend. You know, I get texts from him now, and it turns out he lives up here too. So I'm going to go have beers when things start opening up again with him. Yeah, So Bigfoot and Beyond with Cliff and Bobo. We're making some changes though, because up until now, I don't know how you guys do it with your podcast, but we were paying to be hosted somewhere on this place called Podbean, right? Just one of the many things. So we're paying to have a podcast. We weren't making any money, like we couldn't figure out how to monetize this thing, without us getting on the phone and selling advertising time, which we don't have time for. But we eventually were pointed towards an podcasting network. So now we're hosted for free, which is nice. And they're putting advertising and stuff on there to pay for all that stuff. But because of that, we used to put the entire episode on our YouTube channel, Bigfoot and Beyond Podcast, I think it's called. And then people could listen for free over there. But when we signed this deal with this podcast network, it's called Revolver. They've got a lot of different shows on there. One of the things in the contract was that they have exclusive distribution rights, which means that we can't put it on YouTube anymore. So what we're going to do is you can download the episode into your phone, or however you do podcasts. I don't know, because I don't listen. We have a website now, so you can listen to the podcast for free in our browser in bigfootandbeyondpodcast.com. But we still have that YouTube channel, and we're trying to figure out how to use it. And what I think we're going to do is, since we're going to edit all the episodes, we're going to take out things from the episode, because we have to keep it about an hour to keep the network happy. And so whatever hits the floor, like the editing room floor, we're going to put out on the YouTube channel for free for everybody. So there'll be little bits and pieces that you won't hear on the episode. And we also started this thing called Bobo Storytime in the middle of our podcast, because Bobo has great stories. We thought, hey, let's make that a segment. That'll be cute. We're going to do standalone Bigfoot or Bobo story times on the YouTube channel. And we have a few other surprises coming as well. Our friend Jeff Thomas manages our YouTube channel for us. We've got some really funny things in the works that I can't talk. I could talk about it because I really want to, but I'm not gonna. I'd rather just let it come slap everybody in the face like a dead fish. It's gonna be pretty awesome when we release it, if everything goes right, man. So YouTube is gonna be standalone content that's separate from everything else.
That's what extras kind of a thing.
Yeah, extras, behind the scenes stuff, special interviews, little things that good stories that didn't make the episode, and some really amazing, funny, awesome, cool things I'm excited about. I'd love to tell you, but I can't. So wait a little while, you'll see it.
I'm actually looking forward to it even more, man. You got now I have to just wait for it.
That's all right. Breathe deeply. Yeah.
So Cliff, we're coming up on an hour. I think it was, can't remember exactly when we started having too much fun talking. Any advice that you would give to people wanting to get started going out looking for Bigfoots, or what would you say to them?
Yeah, I've got advice on a couple different levels now, because as Lauren Coleman says, I'm apparently an elder statesman of Bigfoot now, because I have the beard that he has. The advice I would give right out of the gate is enjoy it. Like, go for another reason other than Bigfoot, because most of the time Bigfoot doesn't show up. But if you go out just to encounter a Sasquatch, you're going to come back disappointed most of the time. So go for another reason. Go camping. Go hanging out with your friends. Go fishing. Go mushroom hunting. Go hunting. Go do whatever you like to do in the woods. Go for that reason, and then keep Bigfoot in mind while you're out there and do stuff. I think that's probably the best thing you can do, because that way you'll always be successful, as opposed to almost always failing, which is what Bigfooting really is at the end of the day. When it gets down to the nitty gritty and techniques and stuff, people like the way to get into it, I think, is look for sightings. Look for a sighting report that you're interested in. It could just be one. A cluster, of course, is better, a cluster from one particular area. But even one sighting report, go camping there, because Sasquatch is what I believe I've learned over the last couple decades of doing this, is they go to the same spots again and again. They may not be there on your night, but they'll probably be there in the general vicinity at some point again. They're creatures of habit. They go places for reasons, usually food, I imagine. So camping at a place in the same time of year, go to that same place and see what happens. That's a really good way to start Bigfooting. And then after a while, you'll start recognizing places that, look quote unquote squatchy, right? Like that looks like a Sasquatch should be there. One of my best spots in Mountain Hood National Forest has never had a Bigfoot sighting there, never had a vocalization, nothing has ever been reported from the spot. But yet I was going there for a couple of years, I was batting about 50% there. About half the time I would get some indication that they were around. And if you're batting 50%, man, you're a Hall of Famer, like in baseball and Bigfoot, really.
Mm-hmm.
Although it has very little to do with me being there. It has more to do with the Sasquatches being there than me. It could be anybody. But yeah, you start by doing that, essentially. But more important than anything, go for another reason, because then you'll be successful because you went there for that.
Yeah, I couldn't have said it any better.
I could have. I've used too many words.
No, that sounded great. Well, Cliff, I thank you for coming on the show. It's been a pleasure talking with you, and I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did.
Oh yeah, it's always fun talking Squatch with friends, and thank you for your patience. I know that scheduling is always really hard with me. Maybe it's a fear of commitment. I don't know what it is, but yeah, scheduling is hard for me. But we finally got this nailed down, etc. So thank you for your patience.
Yeah, you said fear. There's this movie called Nightcrawler with Jake Gyllenhaal, and he said this. There's a line he says what fear stands for. I really do like this quote. He says fear stands for false evidence appearing real.
Oh yeah, I like that. That makes sense, because fear is always about what you think might happen in the future.
Mm-hmm.
And if people spent more time focusing on where they actually were at that time, they'd be better off, I think.
Yeah, for sure. Well, again, Cliff, thank you for coming on. I hope you have a great night. Say hi to the wife for me and give Sochi a nice wet doggy hug kiss for me. That sounds weird, but whatever.
I gotcha. She'll understand too.
Thank you for listening, everybody. We've been the Bluff Creek Project Podcast.